Okay, so just a short little bit of information about how tissues, including skin, but not limited to skin, heal. Um, so we'll use skin as an example, but we can apply this to other tissues and places in the body. So if a tissue is damaged, what you would really like to occur is that whatever type of cell was damaged, you replace it with an identical type of cell. When you can do that, it is called regeneration. So I lose a liver cell, I replace it with a liver cell. I lose a skin cell, I replace it with a skin cell. Regeneration is not always possible, though. As we'll see in just a few minutes, some tissues are amitotic and they can't go through regeneration. Also, regeneration tends to be slower than some other types of healing, and so sometimes it's more important to plug the hole than it is what you actually plug the hole with. Okay, so regeneration would be plan A, but plan B is scar tissue formation, which is what we're seeing here. It's called fibrosis. So what happens during the process of fibrosis is you had an injury, you get an inflammatory response, you get increased blood flow, and then your white blood cells kind of come in and clean out whatever was there, we hope. So the leukocytes are going to clean the wound. You are definitely going to have to clot the blood. But then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to start migrating new blood vessels into the area. They're sprouting out of the local blood vessels. And then you will, remember you have mesenchymal cells around your blood vessels. These mesenchymal cells will start to differentiate into connective tissue, and they're actually going to start to differentiate into fibroblast cells, and the fibroblast cells will start to make collagen fibers and start knitting that wound together from the bottom to the top. Collagen fibers sort of weaving it together. So now what you have is you have a whole bunch of capillaries in the area and some collagen fibers, and you've got that really fragile pink tissue that happens as a wound is just healing. If there's a scab on top, you might not see it, but if the scab fell off early, you'd have this really fragile, it's called granulation tissue. It's very pink because of the capillaries. It's also really easy to redamage. After a few weeks, depending on where you are, you have made enough collagen that it's actually relatively strong, and then the capillaries can degenerate, and you'll be left behind with a relatively pale, because not so many capillaries, not very vascular scar. It's strong. It doesn't have as much elasticity as most tissues, but it does tend to have a little bit. It's mostly collagen fibers. It can't function as this word. Parenchyma is just a word that means what was the functional cell that was there. So we've lost function because in this area before we were damaged, let's say we had a hair follicle, we had a sweat gland. So what happens is the scar is knitted together, but it is different tissue than the original tissue. And usually there's a loss of functionality. So a scar on your skin usually will not tan the same way as the other tissues. Doesn't usually grow hair. Doesn't usually sweat, and isn't as stretchy. So you plugged the hole, but at the expense of some functionality. Now, as the scar starts to shrink, it will start pulling the collagen fibers together from the bottom to the top, and it can make the scar really tighten up, which is problematic if it occurs at a joint or if it occurs in an organ. For instance, a lot of infertility is caused by scarring of the oviducts or the uterine tubes. So as they sort of scar, they kink. As the scar shrinks, it kinks. Okay, on the skin, though, a lot of times the epidermis will grow over the scar. So you may see a change in texture, and then you've got some epidermis that's actually growing over. So you may not have lost all of the pigmentation, but definitely some of the functionality. And that is because epidermal cells, those epithelial cells, are really, really good at cell division and regeneration. Okay, so why would you do this if it's not ideal and you lost some functionality? Well, cells can undergo regeneration instead of fibrosis only if the cells themselves can still undergo mitosis. So once cells lose their ability to undergo mitosis, then really this is their choice. And of course, some cells don't undergo mitosis in adults. So there are three categories of cells based on how likely they are to do mitosis. The first ones really do mitosis all the time. They're called labile cells. And so if you damage those, you're really likely to get regeneration. So examples, most epithelial tissues are labile, and if you damage them, you're probably going to get them back. Also, blood producing cells in your bone marrow, those are labile cells as well. The next category of cells are cells that don't go through mitosis all the time, but they remember how to. And that is most of your glandular tissue, like liver, pancreas, endocrine glands. Most of those are capable of regeneration. Interestingly, you can actually do a living liver donation, in which if I had someone I wanted to donate a chunk of my liver to, if they were having liver failure, you could give it to them, and then if I were otherwise healthy and taking care of my liver, last I read it usually would regenerate within about 2 years. Okay, and then the permanent cells are the ones you would never want to damage because they don't have the capacity to go through cell division either at all or dependably. And so you need to protect those at all costs. Your cardiac muscle cells are mostly amitotic, and most of your neurons are amitotic. So those permanent cells, do not damage them, because then scar tissue is really your only healing mechanism. Okay.